Hello there, it's Glenn Miller time. It's old time music time today at postercentral.com. Thanks for coming by the video blog, and I'm Pete Howard, and I know I'm usually showing you Jimi Hendrix and Bob Dylan concert posters and stuff, but I do love all kinds of music, and Glenn Miller rocks. I mean, he's just, swing music back then was the rock and roll of its day, and I just real quickly, if you're young and stuff and you're not sure who Glenn Miller is, he charted the first recordings of many songs that are part of the the American musical landscape that live to this day, and they have such great melodies they'll probably live forever. For example, before great R&B singer Etta James made it her signature song, and before Beyonce sang it to the President and First Lady at Barack Obama's inauguration, Glenn Miller had the first big recording of At Last. You know that one. So Glenn had taken that to top 10 in 1942. Likewise with a song that must be one of the 10 most famous songs ever, Over the Rainbow from The Wizard of Oz. Well, Glenn had it with number one recording. Several other people released it in '39 as well, but he went number one with it in 1939. Sort of an up-tempo version there, whereas Judy Garland had a slower version in the movie. And if you're a rock and roller and you love 50s rock and roll, like Buddy Holly, Elvis Presley, and Fats Domino and stuff, when I think of Fats Domino's signature song, I think of Blueberry Hill, right? So there must have been an original by Fats, right? Well, it wasn't by my presentation. That's right. That's right. Glenn Miller had a number one with the original version of Blueberry Hill in 1940. These are all such famous melodies, you hear them on elevators all the time and everything. How about from Disney movies? Glenn Miller was the first one to chart the very famous When You Wish Upon a Star. He took that to number one in 1940. But let's look at the, now that I've established Glenn's credibility with the young rock and rollers and stuff or whatever, let's start with the earliest poster here that I have, and this is 1938. This was actually before Glenn hit big, I should say. He did some, he actually fronted two unsuccessful bands, one in '37 and one in '38, and this is, of course, the latter from 1938. Sort of a plain Jane poster. I mean, it's still great fun to have. It's just, sort of plain vanilla, isn't it? Even the brown and yellow suggest that, but there's no, it just lacks a little bit of pizzazz the later ones have, or then again, maybe that's just my mind adding it. But this is from the Crystal Ballroom in Cumberland, Maryland, and that was like the western part of Maryland, right under the Altoona, Johnstown part of Pennsylvania, where big band music was really big back then. And what's neat about this is it's August of '38, and in September, Glenn started making records for RCA Victor Bluebird. So it's just before he started making records for the big label that would take him to success. And his first charter for Bluebird Victor was a real yawner, but his second one, from the summer of '39, became his theme song. That's, of course, Moonlight Serenade, and even though it wasn't a number one, it's still extremely familiar melody, and that's from the summer of '39, so we might as well jump to the 1939 poster, and this is the one that we started the video with, and probably my favorite of the three. I just love the fact he's looking to the side. Isn't that a tiny little detail? I just think it's, other people might prefer him holding the trombone on the next poster, but I also love the fact that this is the year Glenn broke through, 1939. In fact, Time magazine noted that in 1939 there were like 300,000 jukeboxes in America, very popular way of getting music across, and they each had 12 to 24 discs each, and in every one Glenn Miller had 2 to 6 of those platters. So, I mean, he was just such a part. He's, in fact, basically he's considered the most universally beloved of all the big bands, and I would definitely carry that forth. If you think of other artists, other big band people like Benny Goodman or Tommy Dorsey or something, you don't really think of necessarily, if you're a baby boomer who was weaned on rock, you don't think of a signature song associated with them. You just knew they were great. But Glenn Miller has not only In the Mood, but all these other songs that are associated with them. So here we have October of 1939, near the end of the decade, and what's cool is that this poster is dated October 12th. Well, on October 7th, In the Mood hit the Billboard charts. And so it was #1 for 3 months. I mean, it just, you know. So that covers 39. Then we move to the 1940 poster, concert poster. And as I said, this one has him holding his signature instrument, the trombone. So a lot of people would consider that just way cool for that reason. And this is, this poster is, it's probably the worst for the wear for the three, although the 38's pretty tough too. It's got a big crease in the middle. Very heavy toning, or sunburn, if you will. It really was in a window for years and years, or else in direct sunlight for months and months. It's, you know, but I don't mind. You know, it was originally white, but that's okay. It's just got a lot of character and everything. And 1940, so this is April 26, 1940, it just gets out of control for Glenn Miller. The amount of success he had is just crazy. In fact, this is April 26th. If you take the first 4 months, Jan, Feb, March, April, and throw in May, for Glenn Miller, it's just crazy. When You Wish Upon a Star was #1 for 5 weeks. Tuxedo Junction was #1 for 9 weeks. The Woodpecker Song was #1 for 7 weeks. Careless was #1 for 5 weeks. And then he had like 3 more records in those 5 months, which were #1 for just a week or two, right? Relative failures for Glenn Miller. So just crazy success for Glenn. And this is interesting because it says Chesterfield program on it. And that, of course, refers to the sponsor, Chesterfield Cigarettes. Back in the 40s, there was nothing known wrong about cigarettes, and so they never hesitated a moment to to associate with cigarette advertising. This is from Johnson City, New York, again in upstate New York, and you know, it shows Glenn holding the trombone, which is really cool. And once again, it's Glenn Miller and his orchestra. Now, here's the kind of trivia that I really, throw at you once in a while that I love. On this date, April 26th, 1940, I'm going to tie this to the later generation again, record producer Giorgio Moroder was born. And he, if you know music really well, you know that he was famous for producing Donna Summer and David Bowie and Blondie and stuff. And he's won 3 Oscars and 4 Grammys and 4 Golden Globes and all that stuff. And you know something? At age 71, he's still, at the time of this video, he's still producing things. He's working with Beyonce and so forth. And that's pretty weird that Beyonce's name has surfaced twice in a Glenn Miller video. So there you have 3 Glenn Miller concert posters from his heyday. And as I said, unfortunately, well, actually, before we mention 44's death again, in 43, he joined the Army Air Force Band. So his last regular concert like this, civilian concert, was September of 42. And so from 43 and 44, he was with the Armed Forces. And this is a Victor recording artist promo stand-up, thick cardboard stand-up from 1943 for Glenn Miller. And even though he wasn't doing concerts, Victor kept releasing his records. And in fact, he had a #1 record this year in That Old Black Magic. And then once again in late 44, December 44, I believe, he was lost over the English Channel. But his music lives on like almost nobody else of the big band era. Just a fantastic artist, postage stamp artist, American institution, and a national treasure. So even if you're a rock and roller right up to the modern day and Eminem's your guy, I think there's something here to appreciate with Glenn Miller and his orchestra. Thanks a lot for coming by. We'll see you next time. And then moving into 1941, his #1 hits kept on coming with songs you probably will or should recognize. For example, #1 in 1941 was A String of Pearls. Familiar stuff. Just, you know, say elevator music if you want to, but just really familiar things. And Glenn's responsible for being the first one to chart with him. 1941, another #1 that's a household name, Chattanooga Choo Choo. I think Glenn Miller and his orchestra charted like 129 singles in just the 4 or 5 year window. Maybe it was a 5 or 6 year window. The 4 year window was for his concerts, but obviously a remarkable artist.